An hour of truth for the battered but proud people of the Empire State. From the financial and entertainment epicenter of New York City to the sleeping and empty small cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor, who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
Hey guys, welcome to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister, and we've got Bob Savage here with us as well.
Hello all from house arrest.
Yeah, from house arrest, that's right. And, you know, I tell you what, I was listening to Cuomo, unfortunately, before the show went live, and I can't figure out if he's trying to give any indication that things are going to lighten up or not. I think he's trying to give the exact opposite. I think he's trying to say this is going to take even longer.
Well, I haven't heard any. He's on now, so obviously I can't listen to him. But he seems to be vacillating back and forth between, you know, we've got to open things up and we have to make sure that we have, you know, the universal excuse that the left is now adopting is everybody's got to get tested. We got to test people. You know, we got to make sure everybody's tested. Testing. Well, who knows how long that's going to take? There is a program apparently launched to test randomly 3,000 New Yorkers. I'm not sure that that's a valid sample size. If you're going to try to extrapolate that out over a population of 18 million, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I'm not a statistician, but I'm suspicious of that because I think that has a high likelihood of being used as a pretense for keeping everything closed longer.
Yeah, could be. And you know what's interesting is yesterday Cuomo did announce that New York State has an FDA-approved antibody test now.
Yeah, I think that's what they're talking about using. That's what the source of the 3,000 test is going to be.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting because there wasn't really much information about it, but when they say New York, does that mean New York State Health Department created this test? Did they work with a private entity? You know, some of that information wasn't available or clear, which to me just leaves more questions than answers.
Yeah, I think we need more information on that. We need to know, you know, how the sample is generated. Like, for example, I guess they're going to use grocery stores in Buffalo. So how does that happen? I mean, do they put a sign up at the grocery store? Is there something on the grocery store website? How many people are they going to take from, you know, any given geographic area? Is the 3,000 going to be evenly distributed across the state, or is there going to be a preponderance of testing in New York City where the virus has had the most virulence? All these questions, you know.
Yeah. Well, I think today, what Cuomo was saying during his live stream seemed to be things are going to be pretty well focused on New York City, and you know, which I think most of us upstate expected. But in his defense, he also said, you know, New York City has the most infections, which is also true. So I would think that the appropriate way to do it would be to divide it up based on either population or infections or at-risk population, and percentage it out and spread it according to, you know, some sort of algorithm with that. But I think there's a lot more questions than answers, and hopefully we get more answers soon, because a lot of his addresses lately have just been kind of talking and conversation more so than policy and what's really going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of slides you see up there about, you know, saying basic truisms like we all have to watch out for each other, we need to wash our hands, we need to make sure that everybody stays healthy, blah, 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 blah. That's not helpful. we have the crux of this whole argument is this balancing act between trying to keep the coronavirus from spreading and being a larger public health emergency than it is now, and trying to protect the economic integrity of the folks out there. So that's the crux, that's the balancing act that has to take place, and it's admittedly a difficult one, but the left is not happy about the trajectory of things right now, because what it looks like increasingly with the passage of time is that this thing is winding down, that the infection rate is going down, that the deaths are going down, the hospitalizations are going down, and it also looks suspiciously like if you do a study of all of the influenza epidemics in recent history, they all show pretty much a history of 6 to 8 weeks, where you have an initial onslaught, an onset of this infection that is very virulent, and there's no immunity. Nobody has any immunity, and that's when the bug is fresh and at its most potent. So that's when you suddenly have a big influx of mortalities among the vulnerable population. So, the people who have other compromising health factors. So then that gets everything rolling. And then as the thing disseminates through the general population, it mutates and it becomes less and less virulent. So you see it peak about 6 weeks in, and then it really starts to dissipate about 8 weeks in, which is where we're headed now. I think if you look, if we peg this thing as somewhere in February as having launched, we're somewhere in that 6 to 8 week range. And the left doesn't like that, because this thing is Christmas morning for statists, this whole corona emergency, as you know.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, I'm glad that you mentioned other influenza outbreaks, because later in the show we're actually going to talk about Spanish flu and the overlaps and the differences. Because as I was looking through here, I think that the only other time I could find in history, and if somebody knows differently, please feel free to comment, call in, that we've had this level of government response, I believe, was Spanish flu in 1918. So we're going to talk about some of the similarities, some of the differences. But first, I want to make sure I give you guys the numbers as of today. Today's Monday, by the way, for those of you who might be struggling to keep track of the days of the week. Today's Monday. I know for me, I always have to check the calendar to make sure I know which days I'm on the air. So as of right now, New York State has a little more than 242,000 confirmed cases. That's up about 50,000 from last week. We have about 14,000 deaths right now in New York. It's actually a little less than 14,000. That's up about 4,000 deaths from last week. What's interesting to me is that about 10,000 of these deaths are from New York City. Only 4,000 are from upstate, which makes sense because New York City's got a lot more population. They're also very, very densely populated. So that makes sense.
Okay, I have two questions real quick. First,
we got here,
can,
deaths doubled as of last week.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Nationwide, but that number I want to say is still fairly low.
Okay, can you hear me, Andrew? Because where our connection's a little sketchy right now.
Yep. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. The question I had was, you said what, 10,000 in New York City or 14,000?
10,000 in New York City, 14,000 total when you include the upstate number.
In the state. Okay, now does the 10,000 include the 3,700